Hello, and welcome to the Tavern Chat podcast. This is a Friday night, which means my lovely wife, Rach, and I, Eric Tenkar, are going to be talking about gamers' health. And since this is November 6th, yes,
Yeah.
November 6th, 2020, that means this is the first gamers' health after the 2020 elections. So this is the elephant in the room because right now I am pretty sure that there are people listening to this podcast who are upset with how the election went, either on the local level or on the state level or on the federal level. And while those feelings are natural, Rach and I have our own opinions on it. And these are non-political opinions, by the way. But here's the thing. Life goes on, and government is a bureaucracy. It doesn't matter really.
And bureaucracies, in my experience, organizational change takes a very long time. The bigger the bureaucracy is. So I don't think we're gonna be experiencing some sort of massive upheavals, whoever's in there.
We didn't have it in the last 4 years. We're not going to have it in the next 4 years. But not only that, see, something...
8 years.
Whatever, yeah.
Upheavals then either.
Yeah. So here's the thing, folks, all right? And I guess you could say we're talking a little bit about emotional and mental health in this one.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's very easy to latch on to things, especially with social media. And I've talked about this before, and I'm going to say this again. For all the benefits of social media, and it is a great benefit, especially in this world of COVID, right? How do you connect to people? Well, through social media. But the other problem is with social media, you get to do things like scream into the wind and then put your fingers in your ear and go tingy-lingy-loo, like I'm not going to listen to you because you're an idiot, because I've had my opinion and I don't have to listen to anything coming back. This goes for everybody. All right?
That's not connecting over the internet. That's engaging conflict over the internet.
Yes. And
it doesn't build anything. It doesn't.
And that's a lot of what social media tends to reinforce. Now, my experience, all right, I have found that Google Plus, God rest its soul, I'm doing a sign of the cross for those at home listening. Google Plus had less was it virtual? Less angst attached to it than something like Facebook. Facebook has a lot of anger and downright disgustingness generally attached to people's general feed. Sorry, Rach is playing with little toys in the background right now.
I kind of got sad. Sorry.
I find Facebook is better if you're in a community that's well managed, that keeps things like politics out of the mix or current events, and you talk about gaming, and that's something else we want to talk about too. If you're listening to this podcast, you're a gamer, likely an old school gamer, for demographics somewhere probably in the age range of upper 20s to 60, 65. That seems to be the demographics of the people listening to this podcast. You might not fit into that, but I'm just saying, what binds us? And if you hear noise in the background, yes, what's going to bind me and Rach in a moment is the fact that the cat's using the pan. And is she standing up?
Uh-huh.
Oh, she's standing up, which means that we're going to be odorified in a few moments. But we have a tie that binds us, and that's gaming. All right? And I think that that's something that at all times we should remind ourselves that that's what binds us. I was a cop for 20 years, and you know what? You had that bond. Didn't matter if the person was a Democrat or Republican. Didn't matter what their race or sexual preference was or their gender identity. Didn't make a fucking hill of beans difference. When the chips were down, we were all part of that same community, that same bond. Maybe you didn't personally like somebody, but when they were in need and in trouble, and there was, maybe medical costs involved for them or their family, you got involved because that tie that was binding you, the community, was more important than the differences. And I think that we have to stress that right now, because these are going to be trying times for people who, especially now, because of COVID. Yes, girls.
You stank it out, sweetie. Yeah, we know.
Come on, join us by the computer, because I think you want to be near the open window, too.
You want to be very far away from that.
Now is the time to stress what brings us together, not what drives us apart. And I know it's difficult. And it's not just gaming. I mean, Rach today did her yoga training. It was via Zoom, and I could hear your class talking via Zoom, and there was a lot of bonding going on.
Yeah.
Now, I can pretty much guarantee that if you took her yoga class as individuals and sat them down and allowed them to speak freely about politics, that nobody would line up next to each other. That they'd be all across the board.
Yeah.
But it's a very good connected group because they are stressing the tie that binds, which is the love of yoga.
Right. And then also the principles behind it too. Like, being able to have compassion for people and, that people are entitled to have their opinions and it's okay that they have their opinions. And, just like sometimes we want to understand why do they have these opinions and not to engage somebody in a conversation that's not comfortable, but, and it's not done through like arguing it. It's, and arguing points. It's done through, listening and understanding, like, oh, I guess I could see this person has experienced these things and those things. I guess I understand why they have this view, I deal with people all day long that have a different, probably, political view than I might have. Does it mean that their view is less valid because it's different than mine? No. There's different life circumstances that contributed to how people view what's going to be helpful and useful for them. So, and just being able to look at it like that, is something that helps me be able to connect with the person, not their political stance.
Yeah, I mean,
and accept that political stance as like part of that person, and it's okay that they have it.
Yeah, the problems that I see with social media when it's, I hate to say used wrong, but when it's implemented in an improper way, which still sounds like shit, is that it's the world, life is shades of gray. It really is. It is shades of gray. The absolutes of good and evil and law and chaos that only, for the most part, exists only in RPGs, right? Everything else is shades of gray. But when you come to social media, especially when it touches upon things like politics, all of a sudden the absolutes come out. And I think part of that is because although we like to think of social media as being personable, it's not personal. All right? You are, for lack of a better phrase, still the anonymous person behind the keyboard. And some of us out there become keyboard warriors in times like this. And COVID doesn't help. Flat out, COVID does not help. Being stuck behind your keyboard as opposed to going out there socializing, working in person as opposed to telecommuting, all these things make times like this even more stressful. And I'm going to suggest that you find things to distract you from that drama. And it might be gaming, okay? It might be binge watching a good TV series. Rich and I have been going through The Expanse. We just finished the third season.
Who knew I would get into that?
I had watched all 4 seasons of The Expanse, and I was like, I told Rach, hey, you might enjoy this. She's like,
and sci-fi. Yeah. I get confused. I don't know that I see what I'm supposed to see because it's all like very different visually, whatever.
And she's really enjoying it.
Really a nice series. Characters are so well developed and really well done.
They're pretty deep.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. You don't have to watch The Expanse because we're saying watch The Expanse, but find something that is distracting. Part of my distraction that I'm doing is I am...
What's distracting and it's meaningful.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I'm putting together a campaign that I hope to kick off for the new year. Campaign world, adventures, the whole 9 yards. Have it be episodic. So players can drop in, drop out. What happened in 1 week does not necessarily mean it's going to be a huge influence on what happens the next time we play. That's my way of not shutting off the world, but to step away from stuff that really doesn't matter. And I'm sure people out there going, oh my God, this all matters. You know what? It doesn't. It doesn't. Because bureaucracy, if you think when you got to call some government agency and you're put on hold for 4.5 fucking hours, or they're gonna
lines when you go in person,
or they're gonna have to, or they're gonna call you back,
and the different lines that you have to go to for this and that, and this and then that.
My last time with that was when a friend of mine, my former sergeant when I was a cop, was applying for World Trade Center benefits, and I had to call the compensation fund, the World Trade Center compensation fund, because they had left me a message and I had missed it. Well, I called back, was put on hold for over half an hour.
Wow.
Before being told that the person would call me back within the next 2 weeks. They never called me back. So, in any case, that's how a bureaucracy works. All right? On one level, I was part of a bureaucracy, especially when I was on the administrative side. It moves slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Change is not something that happens quickly. All right? So, it doesn't matter whether your candidate, especially on the federal level, has won or lost, or may win or lose. Who the fuck knows, right? Doesn't matter in the long run. Doesn't make a fucking hell of beans difference. The bureaucracy behind it is going to move as slow as ever. Don't let it stress you. Don't lose sleep over it. Don't lose friends over it.
I like that. Don't lose friends over it.
I mean, and listen, I am going to be the first person who will say, I have made friends through social media, but not every friend on social media is a friend in real life. And that's the honest to God truth. I have, 3,100 friends on Facebook. I couldn't tell you the names of probably 3,000 of them. But they follow my post and I follow theirs. But if they become overtly political in any direction, I have no problem silencing them. Or if they're really assholes, unfriending and walking away because they're not the friends that you have bonds with. But my fear, not for myself, not for Rach, but my fear for some of my true friends, some of these people that I communicate with, is that they are going to lose or walk away from friends that they have because of political differences in a climate where we don't need to do that. We should be stressing the ties that bind us because, honest to God, in times like this, the only way any kind of true progress is ever going to happen is with cooperation, not dissent. Just the way how life works. I always preferred when I was working in the late 90s in the South Bronx as a cop to get voluntary compliance. And when I say voluntary compliance, not coerced compliance, voluntary. Excuse me, sir, can I talk to you? Excuse me, ma'am. Can you please step across the street? We have a crime scene over here. That was always better than having to make somebody do it. Right? Well, how would you rather get along with people? I'd rather talk to you about gaming. All right? I'd rather talk to you about your health, my health. It's important that we realize that our emotional health will affect our physical health.
Right, and sometimes the stuff that happens for people, like with the politics, so much of it like goes back to like old stuff, like if they were bullied or they had some type of experience like that where they were in like a one down position or something like that. Sometimes they take certain politics or certain people in politics in certain ways, and it's like, I'm not going to tell them, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. We're like, oh, you can't, that's not true. It's just like, okay, that's how you feel, but sort of where do we connect, like, because a lot of it's about bigger stuff,
Yes.
It's not necessarily just the politics. It's like,
it
comes out as like how people have been treated for their whole life. And,
right.
They're kind of like tired of having been treated, and they're trying to be empowered, which is a good thing. We encourage people to feel empowered and to, express their thoughts and things like this and opinions, but not to a way that you're recreating that bullying in a different environment, that you went through.
Right. I think one of the better things I guess I was taught in my 20 years is that you don't necessarily have to have sympathy for somebody and their worldview or their position, but you should have empathy.
Yeah.
Definitely. You should have empathy. You should seek to understand why it is that they feel the way they do. All right? It doesn't mean that you have to be like, oh, all right, you don't have to change your worldview for them, but understand where their worldview comes from. Because once you understand, there's a lot of the angst that you might have against others whose worldview doesn't actually line up with yours, a lot of the angst goes away when you realize, okay, their life experience is different than mine. Because I'm going to guarantee you, listen, Rach and I celebrated our 9th wedding anniversary yesterday. And our worldviews for those 9 years have, what we've experienced together. But the prior 44 years, in my case, of my life, did not match up Rachel's at all. Okay? We led very different lives.
Mm-hmm.
Our worldviews were different. And we came into our relationship with a lot of things in common, but a lot of things that weren't in common.
Mm-hmm.
And by having empathy to understand why those differences are makes it much easier to understand the people that you're dealing with, and especially when you have disagreements.
Again, to maintain that connection.
Yes. And I'm not saying that you need to have sympathy for people that you ardently disagree with.
Well, sympathy is different.
Yes.
Sympathy that has a more power construct behind it. Like
yes.
It's that you have all this and that poor thing. It's belittling kind of,
Right. But have empathy.
Empathy.
I can't stress that enough. And I'm sure that, the empathy thing could be a whole episode discussing on how that has application in gaming. But I'll save that for another time.
What do you mean, like characters that are empaths?
Well, not empaths per se, but having even as a GM, right? When you're dealing...
Or empathy for the monster.
That's what I'm saying. As a GM, get into their head. Get in, just why is it that they are setting up this ambush for the PCs? Is the Goblin tribe starving? Are they really looking to get food? Are they hoping that the PCs are going to have rations? Stuff like that can take it much further, especially if something like that can then suddenly leak into the game session and give some new meaning to what's going on. I think that always works, and I think that could also help with our social media drama. If folks on either side, it's mostly two sides, I guess. And then the vast majority in the middle just don't want to hear shit anyway. But if you had empathy for those whose opinions differ from you, I think that we'd have a lot more compromised understanding in the world. So just give it a thought. Folks, something I don't want to forget to remind people, if you go to tenkarstavern.com, we do a weekly mailing list. Right now, I think there's like 97 people on the list, and it's a newsletter. It goes out on Sundays. It might slip out to like a Monday morning if I have a really busy weekend. But upon request, since I had a request for this, I'm going to include a healthy recipe of my own concoctions in each newsletter. So if you want to, get something that you can look at and go, oh, all right, I can eat healthy, relatively low carb, low sodium, heart healthy. Yeah, I could do that. I could do that for you. I'm going to include one in the weekly newsletters. So go to tenkarstavern.com, click the link for the newsletter, and join up. Love to see you on the list. It's not just that. I give out news updates from gaming throughout the prior week. We're in a world of the pandemic, right? That's the other elephant in the room. Use your common sense. All right, we went shopping today. Got back to the car, and the first thing we did was
regelled.
You might call it hand sanitizer. I affectionately call it Skell gel, but we gelled up to make sure that we were less chance.
And of course, we had to wear our masks inside the store.
Yes.
Yeah, your mom was about to walk in without one on. Like, no, get one on.
Get your mask on, God damn it! No exceptions, folks.
Then the state said you have to you have to bring your own bags, or you have to buy them.
Oh yeah. No more plastic bags.
Yeah, which we all thought was going to be continuing through this COVID issue, but no.
New York State had a whole thing where you couldn't bring a bag with you because they feared it could transmit.
They didn't want you transmitting the virus that way.
But apparently now you can. So
because they're really needy of money.
Well, because they want you to buy the paper bags. You can't get. If you don't buy a paper bag, you can bring your own bag. So, of course, I'm sure Rach would like to get a COVID spray and spray all our bags down and bring them with us. Is that what you're trying to say, Rach?
Nah, we're just gonna bring them with us. Nobody in our house has COVID.
No, I know. I'm being a ball breaker. Ball breaker. Folks, as always, be safe, be well. God bless, and I can't stress that enough. All right. Roll your dice well. Other years we would have been at Game Hole this weekend. Instead, we're home. So hopefully next year. Hopefully by North Texas in June we're back to a relative normality. Hope so. Folks, God willing, I will talk with you all tomorrow. I wish you good night.
Good night.